Hi, everybody. Bryan Norcross here with an update on now Tropical Storm Isaias. It's dipped just below hurricane strength, and this is your evening update for Saturday, August 1st, 2020. Let's take a look at this satellite picture, and you can see what's happened to it. It's gone down to a 70-mile-an-hour tropical storm. Pressure has come up some, and moving to the northwest a little bit slower now, northwest at 20. Still more or less on the same track, but it encountered this landmass. The biggest island in the Bahamian chain is Andros Island, and it was tracking up kind of the west side. It got involved in that, and it kind of jogged over a little bit here. And so since it spent so much time over that landmass, that had the effect of weakening it. So it's got all these different factors going along that are trying to weaken it. One is the upper level dry air, another is the upper level winds, and now Andros Island, and they finally succeeded in knocking it down a peg, but now it's heading out over the warm waters of the Gulf Stream here, so it's going to have the opportunity to kick back up to a hurricane, and that's the National Hurricane Center forecast. Now, looking at it close up, what we see here is you see that thunderstorm complex there with lightning and so forth exploding on the northeast side of it. So I think what's going to happen here is that is an indication that it's, first of all, couple things. One is it's going to kind of want to tug the center a little bit that way, and it's an indication of the re-strengthening process that the Hurricane Center is forecasting as it gets out over the warm water. Clearly now the circulation is well over the warm waters of the Gulf Stream. And the Gulf Stream waters are normally the waters that make storms intensify, like super intensify. Hurricane Andrew super intensified over the Gulf Stream, but Hurricane Andrew was in a pristine atmospheric environment, and this one certainly is not. The two other factors besides Andros Island I was talking about, one is the dry air out here. The oranges are the dry air, and you see there's the kind of dividing line of the storm. This side is all dry. That side over there is moist, and so the Bahamas are getting that moist side of the storm, and we're going to get the dry side of the storm. Now, it's still going to come close enough to us that it throws off some gusty rain bands, and some of those rain bands can have winds up in the 40, 50, up to 60 miles an hour. We already had one at Dania Beach Pier, 59 miles per hour in gusts as it came by. So that's what we're going to be ready for. That's what the tropical storm warning is all about, because we can't exactly predict what's going to happen when those bands are going to come through. So here is the cone. It's a little bit left of where it was earlier today. Remember, we talked about through this whole thing that the weaker it is, the more likely it's going to favor the left side of the cone. The stronger it is, the more likely to favor the right side of the cone. So it got weaker. So everything kind of shifted left here with this advisory. It's going to be interesting now with that big thunderstorm complex if that wants to tug it a little bit to the right. We'll see. But in any case, the thinking is that even if it were to stay on the left side of the cone here with the structure of the storm and not having much bad weather on the left, only these bands kind of throwing off these bands, pushing into the dry air, that in Miami-Dade and Broward, we would not get the hurricane force winds. So that's why now there is no hurricane watch for Broward. It's just tropical storm warning for the coastal sections of Miami-Dade and Broward County. And then hurricane possibilities exist when you get farther on up to the north. So the Hurricane Center is thinking that now that it's over the warm water, it will re-intensify into at least a 75-mile-an-hour hurricane. It's plus or minus these things. It's very hard to predict. And remember, whenever they predict 75, you allow in the short term at least 10 miles an hour or more. In the longer term, 15 to 20 miles an hour or more. So obviously it could be a little bit stronger. The main difference here is that most of, from Palm Beach County on up to the rest of the Florida coast, is almost right in the middle of the cone now. So that's a different kind of scenario in terms of the odds of getting strong winds if the storm re-intensifies. The thinking now is that those unfavorable upper level winds will eventually weaken it as it moves up toward the Carolinas, but still a pretty good tropical storm heading up that way. But we'll see. Again, you got to add 10 or 15 miles per hour. So just timing it out, here we are coming up on 6 p.m. The idea is tropical storm force winds near our coast, Remember, we had the 59-mile-an-hour gust already. So, I mean, this is technically right in those bands. We know we have had winds of tropical storm force. This doesn't mean solid tropical storm force winds. This means more expect some tropical storm force winds. So we're essentially there. In the orange here, that's where hurricane force gusts are. And you see they're limited and well offshore and not by us. In terms of the watches and warnings, you see the yellow here. The yellow, all this tropical storm warnings, including Dade and Broward, coastal Dade and all of Broward. And then to the north, hurricane warnings up there. And the reason for that is watch as we go forward here in time. Again, tropical storm winds in the yellow, hurricane force gusts in the orange. And remember, the Hurricane Center is forecasting the system to slowly intensify at this time. And there you see they're thinking that the hurricane force winds will break back out in terms of a sustained hurricane force wind and affecting the coastline. It's early in the morning, Palm Beach County coastline. And by that time, the tropical storm force wind should be mostly gone from Miami-Dade and Broward. So through the evening into the overnight, we have that possibility of bands of tropical storm force winds. Then the thinking is it will move on to the north. And by tomorrow morning, when you get up, this should be pretty much past. And we'll have a wind from the west, which could make it quite hot here tomorrow. It'll also leave a little moisture behind. So as we get to noon tomorrow, there you see how close the hurricane force winds are to the Treasure Coast. There up in St. Lucie County, up toward Indian River County, Brevard County. But the system is forecast to begin to slowly weaken at that time. But still, they've got hurricane force gusts right over Cape Canaveral and pushing up toward Volusia County, Daytona Beach, and then going farther north. The models have shifted toward the west with this sort of weakening trend. Remember, weaker storms will go farther west generally, and this one is no exception. So the red model is the one we look at because that's the most reliable. That's what the Hurricane Center kind of banks on. If you notice, that's kind of right in the middle of the cone. That's what generally they use for the middle line of the cone. So that's what we look at. If you're looking online, by the way, that's called a TVCA or a TVCX. Just to help that they're a consensus model. We call them Con A and Con X, but that's what you see online if you're looking. And so it goes just over the shoreline, which reflects what you saw in the cone. And then up to the north, the Hurricane Center is forecasting it to weaken some as it gets to the north to a 50-mile-an-hour tropical storm, moving quite quickly because the track is now mainly over land as opposed to being just over the water, because the water up here is very warm, unusually warm for forever, for any time of year, let alone this time of year. So with the track being indicated as being over the land, that means a weaker storm, but obviously a track on the right side of the cone there is over that warm water. So this is all yet subject to be figured out because this is still a few days from now when it would get up there. It's going to start moving quickly once it gets by Florida, and it's going to kind of come on them pretty quick. So hopefully it does go over the land, and hopefully it stays weak. All right, that's your update here for this evening. Of course, we'll let you know if anything big changes, and we'll have updates on Local 10 in South Florida and local10.com, anywhere where all our newscasts are streamed live and on local10.com. So check in there. All right, that's it for now. We'll see you the next time. Thanks.